So today's lesson is about prenatal development, and it will sort of be leading into our teratogens assignment. So most of this week you will be spending doing some research about different teratogens, which I will go into a bit more detail later. And I'm just sort of going to give you a lesson about sort of how babies develop and how that prenatal development happens. Prenatal development. Prenatal development is divided into 3 stages. There's the germinal period, which is the first 2 weeks after conception. There's the embryonic period, and the embryonic period is 2 to 8 weeks after conception. And then there's the fetal period, and the fetal period starts at 2 months gestation. So the germinal period, the first 2 weeks after conception, includes the creation of the zygote. 1 week after conception, the zygote is made up of approximately 100 to 150 cells. The inner layer of the cell is a blastocyst, and the inner layer is the trophoblast. Embryonic period, 2 to 8 weeks after conception. Rate of cell differentiation intensifies. The cell goes from zygote to an embryo. Organs begin to appear, and separation of cells into 3 areas. Endoderm, the innermost layer of the cell, becomes the digestive and respiratory systems. The mesoderm, which is the middle layer, becomes muscle, circulatory, reproductive, and excretory systems. And the ectoderm, which is the outermost layer, it becomes the nervous system and the sensory receptors. Think of ears, nose, eyes, the senses. The embryonic period, 3 main life support systems: the placenta, the umbilical cord, and the amnion. The placenta, life support organ that provides nutrients and oxygen to the growing baby. The umbilical cord is the life support to arteries and one vein that connects the baby to the placenta. It carries nutrients, oxygen, and removes waste. The amnion is the life support that contains the amniotic fluid and the baby. The fetal period, 8 weeks to birth. The fetus is active, moving limbs, head turning, opening and closing its mouth. By 5 months, structures of the skin have formed. Beginning of the 3rd trimester, the baby has a chance of surviving outside the womb. So in the 3rd trimester, that is when the baby's lungs develop, and as soon as the baby is able to breathe on its own, that is a huge indicator of survival outside the womb. So these are some milestones in fetal development that you can see from the infographic. So, go back, miss. So the 1st trimester, within the first 2 months of pregnancy, your baby will develop as a ball of cells called a blastocyst. And it becomes a blastocyst sort of like the 5th day after conception. And between weeks 5 and 6, your baby is roughly the size of an ant. And I'm just going to say your baby just because that's what it shows in the infographic, I think, because it's intended for pregnant women. But it's just sort of the baby. We'll call it the baby. The baby's heart begins to beat and facial features develop, such as the eyes and the nose. Arms with little fingers and legs are growing. Weeks 8 and 9, the baby can move all his limbs, has earlobes and eyelids that are fused shut, which means the baby cannot open its eyes. Weeks 10 and 11, the embryo has become a fetus and has vital organs such as kidney, brain, liver, and intestines. The bones are hardening and the genitals are developing externally. So even around 12 weeks of gestation, depending on the view, this is not true for absolutely every ultrasound, but oftentimes at the 12th week ultrasound, which many women do get when they're pregnant, they can determine by looking just with the naked eye, they are able to see if the baby is a boy or a girl, although not always. Sometimes it's they often will do a 12-week ultrasound and then a 20 to 22-week ultrasound. Usually by the 20 to 22nd week, they are able to see whether the baby is a boy or a girl, depending, of course, of how the baby is sort of positioned. Sometimes parents-to-be will come away a bit disappointed because on the 20th, even at 20 weeks gestation, if the baby isn't facing a certain direction, it can be hard to determine with the ultrasound. 2nd trimester. In these 2 months, the baby's sex will become apparent. The circulatory system will begin pumping blood and bones will harden. Weeks 15 to 16, the baby can see light filtered from outside the womb. The baby begins breathing amniotic fluid to develop the air sacs into lungs. Weeks 19 to 23, the pregnant mother will start to feel the baby kick and move around. The baby can feel the mother dance or run, and hearing is improving. So they say that in the womb, sort of 19 to 23 weeks, the mother is able to feel movement, although it may be much later before anyone else can feel the baby move by placing a hand on the pregnant belly. Weeks 24 to 27, the taste buds are developing and the brain is growing quickly. The baby is almost a foot long, which is 12 inches, and weighs just over a pound. The baby starts sucking their thumb. So even in the womb, the baby may start doing this. Third trimester. Over the next 6 to 12 weeks of pregnancy, the baby's brain will be developing billions of neurons. The skin will fill out with baby fat as the body prepares for life outside the womb. Weeks 28 to 34. The baby will weigh just over 3 pounds and measure about 17 inches. The baby can now distinguish between light and dark. 37 to 39 weeks, the baby is considered full term. The lungs will function and the baby has a firm grasp and may have a full head of hair. Week 40, the baby is ready for life outside the womb. The average weight of a baby is 7.5 pounds. The average length is about 20 inches. Teratogens. Scientists have discovered hazards known as teratogens to prenatal development. Sensitivity to teratogens begins about 3 weeks after conception. The embryonic stage, 2 to 8 weeks, is when the organs are developing. Considering various teratogens as well as environmental hazards, how might these impact the biological, cognitive, socio-emotional process of development from our earlier lesson? So, fertilization to birth.